What have you learned from being the student at DMAC instead of the teacher?
Well, that is a very interesting question.
It was good, and it's also will help me, I think, to for teaching my students this fall to be able to put myself much more easily in their shoes and say, okay, this is where I was at a few months ago. This is where they're going to be. I can relate to them because this will be my first time teaching this fall, and I'm really excited, and I'd love to be able to incorporate some of the technologies and things that we're using. So yeah, so I'm hoping that my experience here will really be a good foundation for this fall.
Well, it's definitely been interesting being a student because I teach this stuff to my students as well, and I guess I haven't really felt as much like a student in this space as maybe more of an advanced student, who can help out other people. The first day I spent a lot of time with one of the other participants going through Audacity and really working with her. So I guess I feel kind of like this hybrid student and teacher.
I have really enjoyed it. For me, because I love to write and I love to compose, I think just having new tools at hand has just completely opened up my mind to what's possible with composition. So I think the biggest challenge has been coming up against my ability levels over and over and over again. There are all these things that I really want to be able to do that I can't really manage because I have, the skill level of like a second grader. And yet I'm imagining what, conceptually I'm thinking about these really big concepts.
The importance of, maybe not even the importance, just the necessity of having to choose a topic. I usually tell my students, I'm like, it's going to be fine. You'll come across it in a moment. Stop stressing out so much. And I was like a basket case up until the last minute. I was like, I just need to pick something. So I think that was probably the biggest surprise for me, that I had to actually pick a topic and, stick with it. And yeah.
It felt humbling and I won't say humiliating. It wasn't quite that bad. But it was definitely the time constraint was very. I usually am someone who likes deadlines, but this being such a firm deadline and such a quick turnaround, I had to really marshal all of my willpower not to get stuck on something, and just until that one piece was right. Especially towards the end, the title screen and the credits I really saved to the last minute, and they're just like, what you see is what you get.
God, that was frustrating. I have to say, and I had to laugh at myself because, as I said before, being a perfectionist kind of, I have to think about that when you assess students because I can't always hold them to my standards because they're just learning as well. And then I'm sitting here going, why is this not working? And I forgot what that was supposed to do. And then you have to ask and you have to ask because you don't get it in your brain. So yeah, I have to say it was frustrating, but it was kind of funny at the same time because then you're thinking, we're always learning. Isn't that what they always say? We're always students. But sometimes it was pretty frustrating.
It was a little jarring.
Yeah.
It was exciting too, though, because to really have to sort of get to the basic level of like learning to use a technology, I think it really allowed me to kind of consider a different sort of space for the material I was working with, and I just sort of learned to approach my topic and sort of my information from a completely new perspective because I had to sort of put it in this mode that I wasn't familiar with at all.
It was difficult. I have to say that it was this was a challenge for me because I'm so comfortable in text-based literacies that learning the technology and putting it together in a meaningful way I found to be a real challenge.
It's funny, in college, a long time ago, I made films, and those were, of course, not digital. They were 8mm and Super 8, and the emphasis there, as I recall, was not only on framing but also on editing, and so that's where all of the action is in splicing, putting together, putting back together, mostly in service of narrative. But I had kind of switched to mostly look at still images through most of my academic life, and it was interesting to try to get back to a notion of making a visual argument, telling a story through filmic means, and so moving more directly into making movies here was it was interesting for me to see what that reactivated and what was new.
Well, at first it felt really overwhelming. I mean, the reason I'm doing this class is because I'm not great with technology. I have shied away from using it in classes. Sometimes I'll give it, I taught an honors upper level class in the fall, and I wanted to give them an assignment that was really open, because the honors track here, the kids are incredible. There's a huge difference between regular and honors here. So I said they could compose, for their final thing, they could compose anything they wanted. It could be a song, it could be a video, it could be a short story, it could be an academic paper if that's what they wanted. And I sort of said, and if you guys want to do things with technology, you're welcome to. And I pointed them in the direction of the Digital Media Project, which is the people who are helpful, and we'll teach them. But I sort of left myself out of it.
Being a student again was a great experience. It was something that I think I actually kind of forgot how it felt to walk into a situation where everything's new and you have absolutely no confidence with the material.
It was everything it was like the first few times. It was, stressful, somewhat confusing. I felt I needed to concentrate. I needed to reread. I didn't know what was going on, even though it was stated on the schedule. So it reminded me, of what it's like to be on the other side of the table.
Being a student again has been awfully humbling. I have had moments where I felt embarrassed to ask a question because it might reveal my own ignorance. I've had moments where I felt like finishing something that I didn't know how to do by a deadline was so impossible that I was actually near tears. And so I think that it's been humbling and probably in ways that are good for me to remember as a teacher.
I think that while I've done multimodal assignments before, I've not really seen them from my students' perspective. And I found that I was struggling in the same ways that they struggle. And it really helped me understand, I guess, how to better frame the context for the assignments, and to make clear goals and objectives in ways that I hadn't quite made them as clear before. I found myself really frustrated at times, and I think that's something they experience on. I've seen that frustration before and haven't always understood it. It's like, what do you mean? This is fun. This is clear, but it's much more frustrating than I anticipated it would be.
It was simultaneously amazing because I wish I could just be a student forever. If I didn't have to have a job, I would just stay in school. It was very humbling being back into the position of really not knowing what I'm doing. And I really learned a lot in terms of how I interact with my students and kind of, telling them, oh, don't worry about this, don't worry about that, and just things like that they, you really do worry and you do want to produce your best work, and it is very disorienting not to know what's going on, and so it's been wonderful and humbling.
What was it like to go back to being the student this week then?
Terrifying. Terrifying, and as Cindy said, humbling. But it was, and I really watched the stages. As I said, I love Malcolm Gladwell's book about 10,000 hours. You need 10,000 hours to be an expert. I don't know that I'll ever get 10,000 hours in, but I really saw the stages that my students have gone through, and the concern and confusion, and then being really angry, upset, ready to quit, looking for somebody to blame. At one point I was so upset that I said to my husband, I'm having this conversation with you that I've had with my students in my office, where they say, this is it, I've had it, I can't do it, I'm going to have to find a different teacher or a different way or a different time. And I I've been very reflective about that process.
It was interesting. It was a nice experience. I was able to see how another teacher teaches without, and being the student was really kind of nice. And it was also interesting to see other teachers as students, and sometimes feeling uncomfortable, which I found kind of interesting actually. And just from an observation point of view, watching teachers struggle to get assignments in on time and things like that was humorous maybe, but also just kind of delightful in some way to see the roles reversed and to see that teachers made uneasy and maybe having to contemplate the situation of being a student again.
When I see Scott and Cindy especially at the in front of the room and like working the room, it's like I think about how much I want to be able to channel them when I'm in a situation like that, which I am, because later this summer I'll be running the workshop for the incoming GTAs in that very room, using those very tables. I learned so much from my colleagues about teaching and about what it means to engage students at varying levels, and from both of them, their incredible sense of optimism. When I love the way both of them, when a student suggests that there's a complication or a problem or a frustration, how they turn that into an opportunity for talking about something great and interesting and hopeful. So that's one of the great things I learned from something like DBAC is remember, channel Scott and Cindy, be positive, be open to new ideas.